This is my huge paludarium enclosure, which I call Junglarium 2.0. Why 2.0, you may ask? Well, let me explain. I always dreamt of having an oversized enclosure like this one that is basically a slice of jungle, and ever since I moved the dark den into my basement, I was toying with an idea of building such an enclosure. But Junglarium 2.0 is obviously not my first big enclosure. I already built an enclosure of similar dimensions that was plagued with problems. The Junglarium 2.0, or what is left of it. There's an actual playlist that I linked in the description with 34 videos in total, showing the whole journey I had from building both enclosures, how I built them in great detail, all the challenges and problems I had, but also all the amazing things that came from it. So I highly recommend going through the playlist. But in short, the original Junglarium wasn't classic enclosure. Sides were actually walls of my house that I coated with hydro insulation, and that was the cause of all my major problems. Basically, the roots penetrated the insulation, causing leaks all over the place, and eventually causing a collapse of a part of a drywall ceiling. That wasn't a fun experience. So it quickly became apparent that I will need to build a new enclosure, which is now the Junglarium 2.0. This one was built a bit more traditionally, but not entirely. It wouldn't be a proper dark den enclosure without some experimentation going on. So the outer shell is made out of plywood. The dimensions are 2.5 meters long, 1.9 meters tall, and 1 meter wide, or for my non-metric viewers, 8.2 feet long, 6.2 feet tall, and 3.3 feet wide. I cut the boards with a circular saw, and I decided to cut out an opening on the left side of the enclosure so that you can see more of the inside and to make it feel even bigger. And even though the size is comparable to the original Junglarium, it definitely feels bigger due to not only that side window, but also the doors are significantly taller, so you can see even more of the enclosure. That was a lesson learned from the previous design, and also the original Junglarium had a water section on the right side of the enclosure, but I decided to put it in the middle to make it more pronounced and so that the waterfall is like a central viewing point of the enclosure. Therefore, I cut an opening in the front panel so you can see inside of the central lake. Here I had the option to go the traditional route of insulating the inside with epoxy resin or pond armor, but getting that stuff showed to be a problematic thing in Croatia. So once again, I would need to experiment with some epoxies that are not tried and tested in the hobby. So therefore I decided for a radical move. I decided to have a glass enclosure with a plywood acting as an outer exoskeleton. Making it entirely out of plexiglass would probably be the best option, but the needed plexiglass was just too expensive. But assembling the glass panels showed to be a bit challenging due to their weight and size, so I called my roach guy to come and help me out. And even the two of us struggled with it.
No, not like that.
Like,
Towards you.
yeah, I know, but it's not possible to just...
What did you do?
Another big issue I had with the original Junglarium was the amount of humidity that was generated by it, which was then vented into the dark den, which then forced me to run dehumidifiers all the time to make it more manageable. So this time I decided to vent all of that excess humidity outside. As everything else, drilling a hole of that size got complicated quickly because naturally I hit some rebar that I had to cut with angle grinder. But eventually I made a hole, I put a tube inside it, drilled the hole into the side panel and prepared everything. A second hole was needed for the drainage because I placed a filter on the other side of the wall. This way maintenance will be easier and also the hump from the pump will be far from the camera. I also drilled the glass panel, placed a bulkhead and glued a long pipe that will go through the wall and into the filter. The third hole on top is for the water to go back to the enclosure and also for the fogger, although that one is still not connected as it is not essential for the enclosure. Also there is the fourth hole that I drilled a while ago, it is for the misting system.
So with all that work finished, it was time to push the enclosure to its spot.
and I had a couple of friends over. They were pushing the enclosure while I was on the other side navigating and making sure that that pipe goes straight to the hole in the wall. But just before the final push, they pushed one side too much, which caused the pipe to touch the side of the wall. And at that point, it didn't seem like anything happened. It seemed like everything is all right, but unfortunately that cracked the glass. And this spelled disaster, which I didn't know how to solve at first. And before I had time to think, as I was pulling back the enclosure, I pressed a bit too hard on the side, resulting in another crack. I was devastated. But I didn't give up and I found a solution. I drilled the end of the crack so it wouldn't continue to spread, and I glued a new piece of glass with same hole over it. For the big crack on the side, I also drilled it and covered it with silicone. This time I pushed the enclosure back alone, slowly and carefully. So with that done, the enclosure was ready for the setup, and the first thing that I did was something that confused a lot of my subscribers. I filled it up with this styrofoam. Just like the old junglarium, I had to create some type of steps so I can make a sloped background, and also I needed substrate to be raised above the lake. This seemed like the ideal solution. I trimmed out the pieces so they will all fit and stacked them to create the steps. They were all connected with expanding foam. Since I wanted to have a real tree stump that is huge, I had to cut out a significant portion of the styrofoam to make enough space for it. And later I realized that it would probably be easier if I just cut the pieces of the tree stump instead of messing with the styrofoam. But this way, in theory, it should be more stable. With that complete, I connected the pump to the tube that will return the water from the filter, and I also drilled a hole in the top panel to connect the pipe for the ventilation. I attached a PC fan on the inside, which is protected with a mesh so animals don't get funny ideas. On the opposite side of the enclosure, I drilled another hole, but I only covered it with a mesh. When the fan turns on, he will blow the hot and humid air outside, while the fresh air will be sucked in through that hole. Now I was eager to start setting up the hardscape inside, and of course, I had to begin with the waterfall. The plan was to have the stream running along the tree stump, so therefore I had to shape the other side. I decided to use the flat rocks because I have plenty of them and they come in all sorts of sizes and shapes. This was basically like setting up Legos, except you don't have any instructions and you are trying to figure out which piece can fit where. Again, I used expanding foam to secure them in place. I also used flat rocks to outline the lake. They will act as a barrier between substrate and water. I placed them sloped like this so frogs will have an easy time getting out of the water if they ever fall inside. Despite them being frogs, supposedly dart frogs are bad swimmers and it is not recommended to have lakes in their enclosures. However, not a single dart frog drowned in the old junglarium, and this is definitely a way to go. Once I was done, I filled it with gravel. Now it was time to tackle the actual background, and just like in the old junglarium, I decided to use dirt. This is the dirt that I just dug out in my backyard, and I assume it contains a bit of clay because it gets really sticky when it's wet, but when it dries it gets really hard and holds shape. So I was just placing it on the ledges, staking it higher and higher until I reached the top. I also secured branches with expanding foam before covering with dirt. Originally I wanted to secure corkboards with expanding foam, but dirt provided to be adequate. I didn't like how side is not fully covered, so I secured branches to it and I attached bromeliads to them. These were officially the first plants added to the Junglarium 2.0. Before I could continue with the dirt, I attached more tree stumps and they completely changed the look of the enclosure. I also set up the lines for fogger and I prepared more corkbarks. Small corkbarks will be hiding spots for geckos, while bigger ones will act as pots for planting plants. After that, it was just more of the same, staking dirt, adding corkbarks, more dirt, until everything was filled with dirt and the background was finished. But more hardware was still needed inside. First I installed 2 more fans, Their function is to be constantly turned on to make sure air inside is moving all the time. Another important thing is lights, and for that I only use Arcadia Reptiles products. Not only that I added LED bars for plants, but I also added UVB lamps because lizards need them to survive. They also need a basking spot, so that's why I have the heat lamp, which is controlled by this sensor that I camouflaged to look like a vine. And last thing I installed is the misting system. It provides the needed water by simulating rain. Drainage is needed so that the substrate can drain the excess moisture, and I built it using clay balls, which are then covered with mesh. The substrate that I use is a mixture of peat moss, sphagnum moss, orchid bark, leaf litter, and a little bit of charcoal. All of that is mixed nicely, but I also mixed in substrate from the old jungularium, which is buzzing with life like springtails, isopods, roaches, and worms. They are all crucial in bioactive setup. You probably noticed that I added some plants as I was building the background. They all came from the old jungularium, and now it was time to move all and make this enclosure look lush. Unfortunately, a lot of, so to say, lushness in the old enclosure came from vining plants, but moving them is impossible because they are all tangled together, so therefore I took a couple of stems and planted them around the new jungularium. This makes it look a bit barren, but in a couple of months those plants will start to take over and I will need to cut them to keep them in check. Now the most fun part, animals. Millipedes got in first, and I'm so satisfied with this species that it is reproducive, active, and there are always at least few visible outside. I highly recommend this species for high humidity enclosures. I added two gecko species, Clemeri and Lugubris, and they are commonly known as day geckos and morning geckos, and I also recorded a crazy interactions between them. Lugubris attacked Clemeri while eating, but Clemeri prevailed, shooing the other girl away. They seem to be pretty territorial, and that's why there's a lot of hiding spots so they can all have their own hides. I also have two species of dart frogs, Dendrobates auratus and Philobates vittatus, but I will replace auratus with some other species in the future. Philobates vittatus are amazing inside. They are never hiding, always on the hunt. Males are often calling and they reproduce without any problems. I moved some of their tadpoles in the lake, but one male had few of them on his back when I added him inside, and they are already swimming in the lake. And that is it. This is the story of how I built the Jungularium 2.0. Soon I will get more animals inside, so make sure to stick around if you want to see the development of this enclosure. I also remind you to check out the playlist linked in the description, because this video is just a small glimpse into the enormous work it took to build these two enclosures. Now, I hope that you all enjoyed this video. If you did, thumbs it up and comment something. If you want to support this channel more, there's a Patreon page and also a web shop page with merch and other stuff. The enclosures, plastic, acrylic, enclosure parts, and even sand for the texture. If you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe. I upload on Monday and sometimes a live stream on Sunday. So see you again really soon. Bye!